this evening we are joined by Abraham, who you go by Abe though typically, right, Abe?
Right. Yes.
Okay. So Abe is a 3L, and he is really like all things Southwestern. When you saw that email, you probably saw, that list of 1,000 things he has been a part of, is a part of, plans to be a part of. But I thought it would be great for you all to kind of get a taste of, what that experience has been like for him personally, and hopefully, Abe, you can also give us some feedback, some tips, on things that, have helped you manage these extracurriculars and co-curriculars along with honors programs and externships, and maybe if you can just kind of give them that overview of the different activities you've participated in, what types of leadership roles you've had, and then currently, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, perfect. So, hi everyone. Yes, Xavier, I go by Abe. Abraham is like a family name, and so it's my grandfather. I'm an Abe. So I am the Student Bar Association president, which is the equivalent to like student government. I am a 3L, so in my last year in the traditional day program. And like Dean Gear said, I've been involved in a ton of different things while on campus. I'm currently a board member of the Southwestern Law Review, which is one of our 3 journals. I used to be an editor last year, so it's the nitty-gritty stuff. And this year, I'm actually in like a leadership role there. I'm a board member planning our different symposia, which is like this big event. Well, we're having 2 this year, but it's a big event essentially surrounding a specific topic of law, and we bring in scholars from all over the country to talk about it. So I'm really looking forward to that. I will not give you the information about that just yet because we're still working out the kinks. But obviously you're welcome to join the symposia. I am the co-president of the Latino Law Students Association and co-president of the Environmental Law Society on campus. Those 2 organizations are actually very different despite the fact that they are student-run organizations. The Latino Law Students Organization for me is just kind of like a place to be yourself on campus, a place to talk about issues that are particular to Latinos and, really be and like find that culture at Southwestern. Whereas the Environmental Law Society is a little bit more of that like professional networking development. Not to say that LASA doesn't do the same, but it's really like students that are just interested in this area of the law. And so we get together, we have events, we have career panels, really cool stuff. Apart from that, I have a teaching assistant in constitutional law, in environmental law, in torts, contracts, and criminal law. I've also been a research assistant for 3 different professors, and I've done a variety of things with them. One of them is currently writing a book, and so I was helping him doing like research and footnote work. Another was writing an article, so I was doing very deep research in Spanish on Argentinian constitutionalism. And then one of them is, she's actually the topic of one of our symposias. I was helping her doing some research and editing of scholarly articles of people responding to her book. So it's really cool variety of research stuff. I am a member of the Southwestern Inn of Court, which is a really cool kind of like networking opportunity. They have young attorneys, older attorneys, judges, anyone who has been involved at Southwestern come together once a month, and we talk about a variety of issues under the law. Our most recent event, which was like 2 weeks ago, was a very topical conversation, but it's also a hard one to have in our legal community, which is about substance abuse and how that affects competency. So it really, competency to practice, that is. So it is really interesting to have those kind of conversations with like a circuit judge, or a court of appeal, judge. And it was a very honest and really amazing event. So I'm happy to be a part of that. What other things do I do? I am part of I am doing the MBA JD dual degree. Well, I'm applying, so fingers crossed for me. So I will be completing my 3 years at Southwestern and then adding 1 more to go to the Drucker School of Management and concurrently finish my JD and my MBA. I am part of Phi Alpha Delta, which is the one of the two main legal fraternities, and part of their Society of Scholars. I've been able to kind of go to a bunch of different events like the ABA conference, the Phi Alpha Delta conference. I'm signed up to go to this Yosemite conference on environmental law. So really cool opportunities that I've gotten to just network and meet attorneys outside of Southwestern, but through Southwestern. So I think I've hit most of the marks. Is there anything I'm missing?
I think actually you have missed some things, surprisingly, but you know, that's definitely I think part of the highlight reel. I mean, you're a Dean's Fellow. Can you explain to them really how, first off, let me actually ask you, were you very active in undergrad in student government and organizations, or is this something you really decided to just kind of run with in law school?
Sure. So I was kind of active. I was like really devoted into one particular project in my undergrad, which is that I was an AmeriCorps volunteer, and I used to work in a program called Jumpstart, which, if any of you know Head Start, it's a very similar program. But essentially I went to school at Tufts University right outside of Boston. And so I would go into like underprivileged communities in Boston, specifically with dual language learners, and help like preschoolers with language acquisition. And so I did that for all 4 years there. It was like 300 hours every year. It was a really cool program. And because of that, I really dove right into it. And then I had a leadership position within that for the last 3 years. So it was only my first year that I was like a core member. Then I was a team leader. Yeah, it was a wonderful opportunity, but it took up so much of my time, and I double majored. So I didn't have the time to go into other activities, nor was I really that interested, I have to say. I don't know why it is that at Southwestern I found my place, which was in some more of this,
I think, I think hopefully it just speaks to all the different, sort of check boxes that you found, you were able to cross off at Southwestern. All those things kind of resonated for you. I think Elizabeth has a question. You can go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yeah. Kind of two-part that I think go together. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming you have like a concentration in environmental. Actually, you keep mentioning that. So I was wondering if that is your concentration, if you have one, and what your double majors were, kind of like if that played into what you're focusing on directly in law school.
Sure. So I guess I'll start kind of with the double majors question, because that kind of leads into the other. So I majored in Spanish and in economics. At Tufts, you couldn't have like a concentration within economics. So I call it an informal concentration in environmental economics, which is basically the effect of policy on the environment, the effects of environmental policy on markets, essentially, and how like trading or cap and trade programs or tariffs and taxing affect like equilibria, essentially. Not at all a political science person. I actually thought those kind of classes were very draining. And so it was weird to me when I made the transition into law, because everyone assumes you're a poli-sci and that you've been studying government for so long. And I was like, okay, you don't realize I didn't even have that in high school. So like, let's go square one. There are 3 branches of government, right? So I really had to take it from the ground level up. That did require a little bit of work on my end, but it was fine, he still made it. And so because of that environmental economics background, I did come to Southwestern with some interest in environmental law. And it was really here that I dove into it, and I've, taken the courses. I'm TAing for it now. I'm also like informally doing some research, and I'm writing an article right now on environmental structure and policy.
So I think the first part of your question was, do we have a formal concentration in it? It is not one of the formal concentrations that we offer, but to be honest, the formalization of the concentrations is a relatively new construct. I mean, pretty much throughout our entire 100-year plus history, students have essentially made their own concentrations, right? You find the courses that are of interest to you, and you kind of group them together, whether or not it's a singular focus or a varied focus. So only up until a few years ago did we even formalize the ones that we do have. And that's really just for students to have the notations on their transcripts and whatnot, so, and it gives some people some more direction if if that really speaks to them. So what Abe is doing and what a lot of students still do is kind of build their own curriculum. And so you kind of can benefit from fewer restrictions, if you will. You still have coursework that you have to take by year. So you have your 1L required courses and 2L and 3L and so forth. But then the majority of your time in your 2L and 3L years is spent taking electives. And so depending on what your interests are, that's where you can kind of explore. And then I'm sure, you know, Abe, with externships and whatnot, that's helped you kind of refine some of your interests.
Sure. And actually, I'm sorry, I didn't answer the concentration at Southwestern question. I actually am concentrating. I have a double concentration. One is civil litigation and advocacy, which is very much courtroom procedure and like the steps leading up to courts and appeals and things like that. So that's one side. And then the other side, I'm actually concentrating in public interest law. Makes sense. And so for that, courses like environmental law, an externship I did at the immigration court qualify for public interest. Whereas on the flip side, that's civil litigation. I've externed at a personal interest law firm. I've worked at a medical malpractice firm, and I'm currently in a appellate litigation clinic where we're preparing a case to argue before the Ninth Circuit. So all of that kind of falls into the civil litigation side.
I surely don't even know how you're only at the beginning of your third year and doing all of these things. This is like a tremendous number. Any other questions for Abe before I move on with another question? Cecily, do you have one?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Hi, Abe. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well.
That's good. My question was, I know earlier before we formally got started with everything, you were saying that you were taking 2 courses, but then you also you were doing 2 clinics. And I was just wondering, how is that like schedule wise? Is it working for you, or is it kind of tough to kind of basically do, it's basically like 4 things. So.
Right.
Those are only like 4 official things. And then there was the law review. And
Right.
then
Honestly, for me, so I'm taking 2 courses, which is my CalBar writing, which is just preparing you to write for the California bar. You don't need to worry about that right now. That's like future you problems.
Okay.
So it's one of our bar prep courses in your last year. And then I'm also taking community property, which is one of the doctrinal subjects or bar tested subjects. And that's just like marital property. So those are my like official classes. Then I do have class components to each clinic. I'm in the appellate litigation clinic, like I was mentioning, and so that meets once a week for 2 hours. And I'm also in the community lawyering clinic, which is a partnership we have with CSUN or Cal State Northridge. And essentially we're basically like a law firm specific to that school. And so what we do there is all the students can meet with us and they become clients if we can handle the case in-house. If not, we collect resources and help the students either become their own advocates or find them proper counsel. So it's a really cool program, and both the appellate litigation clinic and the community lawyering clinic have a lot of work to them. It's just outside of your normal scope of hours. I end up doing a lot of research, contacting different law firms or nonprofits, doing a lot of research for the Ninth Circuit case. So I find that having like not so much on my schedule, like in my schedule rather, like fixed times for class is helpful here because I can do my research at like 2 in the morning or at noon, whatever it is, however I'm feeling that week. That flexibility with like my busy schedule is really useful. Other students don't like that, and they like to have the very structured, like from 2 to 4 you're doing this, from 4 to 5 you're doing that. I don't. I think I thrive having like a list of assignments and then filling it in as I go.
I do that. I love that. Yeah, I do. Yeah. I work well like that.
It does require a lot of like auditing on like the back end to make sure you're not missing something. Right. Just making sure that you're all set. But otherwise, yeah, that like the calendar is completely blocked freaks me out, so I don't do it. I know I'm not supposed to say that to you as a Dean's Fellow, but it is what it is.
Well, no, I think that's okay. I mean, so Dean's Fellows, for those that are not familiar, are current students like Abe who have done well in their coursework. So that's the thing we haven't really touched upon. I mean, he's this busy, but he's also a great student too, which is, it's not, I wouldn't even say that's the icing. I mean, I think that's the cake. right? That's the part that's actually going to make him a marketable, future attorney, because employers want to know that you obviously have all these great skills, but they also want to know you've got, that you've really honed them, and you can, do the research and do those things that they need you to do, and do it at a really high level. So grade performance, especially after your first year, that class rank you get after your first year is probably, one of the most determining things in the future for students, because it's kind of the basis for some types of externships, and then kind of down the road, you want to build upon that. It's kind of, you got to play the long game, right? It's that marathon. And so good academic foundation is really paramount. Michelle, you have a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to thank Southwestern Law for hosting this event. And
yeah,
Abe,
thank you for joining us.
And Abe, I'd like to inquire more about, did you take some time off before attending law school, or did you attend law school directly from undergrad?
Sure. I took 3 years off between undergrad and law school. And for those 3 years, I worked as an immigration paralegal. And that's really what made me decide I wanted to go to law school, just working with clients. And I don't know, I keep saying the story, but it really does, it is emotional when you can tell a parent that they get to stay in the country with their children. That in and of itself was I need to be an advocate, I need to be in a courtroom, and I need to be defending people that need help. So that really solidified my decision to go to law school. And it also provided me some background in the law, which is very helpful in some of your courses. If you have any paralegaling experience, your civil procedure course will be a little bit easier, just because you kind of know what motions are, that jurisdiction is a thing. Otherwise, you might have to learn some things. If you've worked in a criminal office in any capacity, criminal law might be easier for you. I definitely appreciate the time that I took off, because it also allowed me to really divide myself and regather and group after undergrad, where I wasn't so focused on my education and was more focused on other activities and things and studying abroad. Whereas now I knew that I wanted to go to the law school. I had a purpose and I had a mission. And so it allowed me to dive into these busy weeks and know that ultimately it has that goal at the end.
Great, thank you so much.
Sure.
So Abe, what was something that you thought would come easy to you in law school, but didn't? And then what was something that, well, actually, let's just start there. What was something you thought was going to come easy, but it didn't? And then what did you do about that? Or did everything just come so naturally?
No, I was going to say some things that I thought would be hard and were hard.
Right.
So let's see. I don't think I came into law school underestimating it. I definitely knew that it was going to be a significant amount of reading, that I would have to relearn writing. You're basically learning a whole new language and a whole new structure. And so I was giving that a significant amount of weight coming into it. You definitely hear about, especially in this platform right now, you're hearing about all the great things that I've done and what I've accomplished and what I'm doing, but that doesn't mean that I've only seen success at Southwestern. I've, underperformed in classes. I've failed a midterm before. I've had to take the additional time, go to office hours, figure these things out. I've not made teams that I've competed for. So there's definitely been those barriers as well. But that's just kind of a part of the game. You're not going to win.
I think that's really, really great for you to point that out too, because you're right. There are always lows that come with the highs. So that's really great. I'm glad you pointed that out. Is there something, you're in the last third of law school, and I know you've got the MBA program, coming up, but you're in the last third of law school. Is there something it's that, I think I might have asked you this before in one of the emails, but is there something you wish you had known maybe about your Southwestern experience coming in that you've subsequently learned?
I think and this might go to one of the benefits of Southwestern. I think I would have liked to know, and I would have wished to know that the professors aren't nearly as intimidating as you think they are. like we think of graduate professors, and I apologize if anyone on here is going to hear to the professors, but we always think of like very stuffy, like old school law professors who don't care about your name, don't care about your face. You're literally just a number, and they're going to cold call you in class, and that's the extent of it. That is not the experience I've had at Southwestern. There are definitely professors that I don't vibe with, and that, you know, I'm there to learn the material and move on from their class. But I've had a significant amount of mentorship at Southwestern. And it took me a while to realize that, to realize I can go to office hours and just chat with a professor or get to know their experiences. Is that something that I want to pursue? You know, I've had dinner at the dean's house, and I've had drinks with our vice dean, and they are very approachable people. And so I wish I would have had that, so I would have taken advantage in my first year a little bit more than I did. You know, obviously, please keep some level of professionalism and decorum. Yeah. That's not, you know, not to say you can just go and like high five your professors or, you know, slap them on the back. But I definitely feel like I've had a very invaluable experience with getting to know the people who work here and roam these halls, if you will, or virtual space now.
Sure. Is there something you're afraid you're not going to get a chance to do before you graduate? Is there something you're like, I've got to squeeze this one thing in?
Honestly, I've been squeezing it all. If anything, it's been a couple of courses and like getting to learn from several professors, because we have so much. I am not interested in intellectual property as a career. I don't even know the difference between trademark and copyright, nor do I want to know. That's a lie. I do want to know, but I don't know that I have the time to like go audit a course or go to more events that like are the 101 type courses. So I'm concerned about that, because you're only a student for so long. You're only allowed to be like really dumb for so long, and ask those questions. So I'm trying to do the most that I can on like the educational side and diversify my background. But I am a little bit nervous about that, that, you know, I've overlooked something, an opportunity, if you will.
Well, good thing you can always come back and audit a class. Good thing.
I will.
Yeah, I'm sure. I have no doubt. Other questions for Abe? Does anybody else have some questions?
I think someone put one in the chat. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, let me see.
While you look at that, I was just going to ask, and maybe Dean Gear's getting to this later, but what made you choose Southwestern over other schools? Like, what was it that really stood out to you about it?
Yeah. So Southwestern, first, I wanted to be local. I went to undergrad in Boston. I'm from LA. I wanted to really, at that point in time, do something totally different. I applied to no California schools. My mom was devastated when I told her the closest school to LA was UChicago. So when I was like, I'm moving back, that was great. So I only applied locally, so I didn't necessarily have a million schools I was looking at. That said, I think what was different about Southwestern is that I did have access to like getting to know the professors beforehand. I went to an event put on by the Latino Law Students Association. I actually interviewed once I was accepted with a professor to get to know her a little bit more, and she's actually one of my mentors now. So, you know, getting those kind of hands-on experiences with Southwestern was something that I did not receive from other schools. I like toured USC and I toured UCLA, sat in on classes, but like I left without anyone getting to know me. The professors did not care. They were just like, someone's over there, don't report to my class. And I said, okay. You know, whereas here, like, I remember Professor Hallman, I sat in on a class on mortgages, which like as an econ major, I knew and was like pretty cool about, excited about that. Wasn't totally lost. But afterwards he like wanted to go grab a coffee and like chat, but like I had a full curriculum set up for me, or the full like day schedule. So I couldn't do that, but it was just cool to have that opportunity. And I do think Southwestern has that above other schools.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks,
Sure.
Abe. Thanks, Elizabeth, too. So one of the questions in the chat is, Thank you for being transparent. When you had a class that you didn't pass, what did you do and how did the school handle this?
Sure. So speaking transparently, I don't have a class that I didn't pass. I've had midterms that I failed and had to like get it together for the final. So I can't speak to failing a class.
And in case others don't know, the majority of your grade in a single class is really your final exam. You know, many classes do have these midterms where they can be a small percentage of your grade, but for the vast majority, it is one final exam. So go ahead, sorry.
You know, that's absolutely true. And this is my civil procedure class, which is notoriously one of the most boring classes in law school, let alone your 1L year. So I did not do well on the midterm. I was devastated. I thought I didn't belong in law school. This was all a joke and I'm, you know, going to fail out after my first year. So what's the point? So like I have that moment and you will have those moments. It's anywhere you go. Then it was just a figuring out why I decided to come to law school and what I needed to do. So that is where I decided to work more on myself and like my study schedule and what I was doing. Fortunately, I did have a lot of support. You will have a class in your 1L year called Foundations, and it's really supposed to be like law school 101. You don't learn substantive material. You're not learning like torts or contracts or anything. You're learning how to read cases, how to brief cases, how to prepare for midterms, how to take practice exams, how to take multiple choice exams. And that's the whole purpose of that class. So I actually met with the professor one-on-one to create my own study schedule. Also adapted to me, so I still didn't have the like blocks of on your calendar because I could not deal with that. But it was more of like a to-do list. Like these are the things I need to accomplish in a week in order to stay up to date with practice. And ultimately, I did pass that class and did actually very well in it. So you know, there is some restructuring on yourself and trying to figure out what it is that you need to change, but you do have a lot of support at Southwestern to do so.
Great. The next question is, how did you get engaged in research, or rather, how does a law student get engaged in research?
So I've been fortunate enough to work with 3 different professors in research, and actually was just asked by a 4th. But it is really kind of up to you. Some professors will just publish on like the website or flyers if we're on campus, like looking for research assistants on this area. In other situations, and more so what I've done, is I love you as a professor. What are you currently working on? Is there anything I can help in? And for the most part, they've been very receptive. A lot of them have said, no, they're not working on anything, or they already have research assistants. I have also been fortunate enough to be on like the flip side where they're like, I'm thinking about writing this article. Are you interested in doing this weird, minute, specialized research? And it has been weird, I will say, being like let go into a project and told, come back to me in 2 weeks with some kind of like formalized results essentially. That has been, it's been difficult, but at the same time, it's good practice to your real life and like what you will be as an associate attorney. You will be told, figure out this area of law. And so you're not given much, guidance in that respect. So parts have been hard, parts of it have been very enjoyable. With respect to just getting to know the professors and asking them, that's also difficult. Like I said, I didn't do it very much my 1L year, and I kind of missed my opportunity there. But I recommend that, whether at Southwestern, anywhere you go, that you do please pursue those avenues if you are interested in research, because it's great. And now, I guess that's another thing on law review. You actually are writing a note. You're writing your own student comment on either a area of law that you think needs to be revisited and revamped, or a case that came out by a circuit court or by the Supreme Court that you think was improperly decided. And so ultimately on your law review or on Law Review or Law Journal, you are able to write your own piece and submit it to the editor-in-chief anonymously. Fortunately, mine was selected for publication. So by the end of this year, I will have a published article at the Southwestern Law Review about something I'm extremely passionate about.
That's wonderful. The next question Leslie asked is, how do tests in law school compare to undergrad tests?
So my undergrad experience, I didn't do bad in any by any regards, but I just didn't care as much as I care now. And it's not so much that I care about like the grades per se. I care about learning this material. And it's because I want to provide my clients with a very holistic approach to their experiences and what's going on with them. While I might not handle divorce cases and I might not handle community property, I know that if I have someone that comes up to me with this like asylum claim, but they're having marital issues or they're having some kind of property dispute, I need to be able to issue spot and at least notice that there's a problem. So it's finding that like interest in the course that allows me to learn it essentially. And within that sense, preparing for finals is more of a gradual process throughout the semester. You're constantly learning, you're testing yourself, you're forgetting things and relearning them. An outline is not something that I've ever done before until law school, but basically it's a document you will create in every class. And it's just like a breakdown of what's being taught to you in your own words. Like you're essentially teaching it to yourself for the end of the semester and further for the bar. And that really allowed me creating those outlines and practicing throughout the semester and caring about my courses really is what's allowing me to do well in those classes. With respect to the actual grading system, as Dean Gear mentioned, your law school finals are either 100% of your grade or like 85 plus. So it will all pretty much be on one final. But if you're doing the right things throughout the semester and practicing and going to office hours and not waiting or having questions, but rather getting them answered, within the week, you will be prepared for that final. You'll be ready to like attack it too. It's not even like you're ready, scared. You're like, no, I want to like devour this thing right now.
Yeah, that's not the first time I've heard that mentality. We had a part-time evening student who's since graduated a few years ago, and he worked full-time at a law firm. He went to school part-time, and I remember he used to get so excited right before finals, and it's not the typical reaction, but he was like, I'm so ready. When is this final? I want to do it right now. I'm gonna kill it. I was like, wow, gosh, like this is such a different, usually there's like a good amount of intimidation or nervousness or just some general unease because it is such a big, a big part of the grade. But he was like, I'm ready. I want to do it right now. Somebody give me a final right now. And so I would ask him about it. And then one day he said, like, yes, that's like, I have this job and I do that, 40 hours a week, but like school is also my job. And I want to show how good of a job I'm doing. And he was like, I also want to get some of this out of my head, put it down to paper, and really just show how hard I've been working. So he had this really great, I thought, take on how to turn the situation around and turn what could have been, or is usually perceived as a stressful experience as a way, he was competing with himself, to really prove like, I'm a rock star and now everybody else is going to know it. So it was a really refreshing take on that. Okay, so let's see. Another question, a little bit of a take on what Elizabeth had asked. Why did you choose Southwestern? How did you know it was the right fit for you? I think you kind of said a little bit about that. Is there something maybe you feel like though, maybe you want to elaborate on, some maybe lesser known factor that you also have come to realize, maybe solidified that decision after the fact?
Sure. So I knew I was interested in immigration law coming to Southwestern, whether that's my career trajectory or if that's something that I'm always doing pro bono on the side. I knew that I had this interest in public interest. And Southwestern has a phenomenal public interest program. We even have like scholarships for people that are working at nonprofits over the summer and like aren't getting paid. We have like grants so they can like afford their living. One program that I knew I wanted to get involved in from the start is the clinic I'm in right now, which is the Appellate Litigation Clinic. And the reason for that is because if I do move into immigration law, I don't want to do some of that like ground level stuff. I want to work for like the ACLU or like one of these appeal courts and take the cases to the Ninth Circuit or the Supreme Court, and or like the national or the national lawyer, the NLG. And this appellate litigation clinic, we are working on a Convention Against Torture case that was denied at the immigration court and the BIA level, and so now we're taking it to the Ninth Circuit, basically to say that this person satisfied the requirements. And so that's what we call like impact immigration litigation. And so it's not only his case, but it's anyone similarly situated can now point to his case as precedent and say, this is what the law should, like, this is what we need to decide on this case because the Ninth Circuit said so. And Southwestern has a phenomenal Ninth Circuit not immigration appeals, but it's an appeals clinic. And so I knew from like the get-go that that was one of the things that I was going to do while I was at Southwestern. And now I am in the clinic and I'm pulling my hair out, but it is worth it. So it was that. It's, you know, just the nonprofits in Los Angeles, and I mean, I don't know if I should be saying this, but they do know a Southwestern student because you are equipped to enter your nonprofit. You are prepared, your classes have prepared you, the clinics have prepared you. We are a lot more capable than some of the other students, some of the other interns, and not to toot our own horn, but that will become readily available or readily noticeable to you. In your first externship if you're working with students at other schools. They know all of this in theory, but we know it in practice.
Yeah, that's definitely not the first time I've heard that. So I'm going to kind of just merge a couple questions here. What would you do? What are some tips you have to help people build relationships with professors and mentors? And also, you know, if you are in study groups, you know, how did those come about, or do you study on your own?
Okay. So with professors and just general networking, I don't know if it's because of the father that I had that I definitely think that you can get so much by being kind to people and being professional. There's this mentality that exists in many law schools that you need to be like the top of your class and people care and respect you, have respect for you because you were cutthroat and like savage and like go and like tear up case books and hide things from other students and be the like top 1%. We don't do that at Southwestern, but like I've heard horror stories of people at other law schools that like literally will go into the library and go hide things from other students. Yeah. So I've always felt that like, you know, being genuine and wanting to get to know a professor, whether or not that's like your area of interest, just getting to know what they're interested in, going on like coffee dates and like networking and just, I don't know, I feel like that does so much more than speaking up in every class and showing off or being the person that gets like the A in the class. There's not only one A, there's multiple A's. So don't freak out on that either. I don't know, I felt that has done wonders for me, just being kind.
I think that's a good lesson just to have for your entire professional career. You know, that's, you can't go wrong with that. I know you have class tonight, so we don't have too much more time with you. We probably have time for maybe one more question. If anybody has one, or if, Abe, I don't know if you have some parting wisdom for this group. Does anybody have another question? Cecily, you do? Okay, go ahead.
I do. My question is, I was interested in your scale program. And I know that's not what you're doing, but I wanted to know, are students that are involved in scale, would they have the same opportunities to do all like 20 things that Abe is doing? Or they won't have time to do that?
So yes and no. I mean, technically, any student in any program can participate in the same types of things. They can do externships, they can do clinics, they can do they have their own dean's fellows, they're in organizations and part of student government, they're in honors programs like the law review.
Okay.
The reality is they don't have as much time. They do have one fewer year.
Right.
So just by virtue of that, they do have to make some choices. But they're, you know, I wouldn't think that any student choosing a program is going to choose that program over another versus, you know, based on clubs or, you know, things like that. I think people usually choose the program for kind of like its entirety, you know, so
Okay.
it would be not just the fact that it's 2 years, but the small cohort, the guaranteed externship, you know, just the labs essentially that the scale students have, right, to help with that practice readiness. It is different than traditional, but for students that want, you know, the additional opportunity and time to build more electives into their curriculum and just have, you know, they get one more summer. I mean, it's literally just a function of time. Then,
Gotcha.
you know,
Okay.
the vast majority of students do choose the traditional 3-year program for a number of reasons. So it just kind of comes down to whichever one you think is ultimately, you know, a better fit for you. But yes, scale students, part-time students, full-time students, everybody does have access to all of those things. You just have to make different choices depending upon how much time you have.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again.
Sure. So Abe, any final words of wisdom or anything you want to make sure this group knows that they can and or should do while they're in law school?
Okay, so putting me on the spot there. So I think that one thing you should do regardless is go outside of your comfort zone, whether that means speaking to professors or speaking to other students that you might not normally speak to. Do it. Getting diversity in your academic experience is not a bad thing. Take that random class that you're like kind of interested in. You might realize that you're a lot more interested than you thought you were. Of course, you are limited in scale if you're going with that in terms of like electives, but I still would say, you know, reach out to like professors that you would like to get to know more, even if you are not like in their classes. I'm actually a teaching assistant and a research assistant for Professor Beth Caldwell, and I have never had that professor in any of my classes, but she's one of my mentors, and she helped me with my note for law review. So really just stepping out of your comfort zone. I think you do have that flexibility at Southwestern more than at other schools because we are smaller, and your professors genuinely love being here. So I think they are all about promoting you, promoting Southwestern students. So they are more willing to get to know you and really figure out what it is that you want to do in law school and propel that forward. As a student, I don't think I mentioned this, but in my 1L year, I was not involved at all. Professor Gear said this, that your 1L year, you have to do well academically. And that's really to set yourself up for success. You are able to do all of the things that you want to do in your second, third, fourth year, depending on your program. But that first year, you need to do well academically to get into whatever programs that you want, to get the externship that you want, that is like that initial stepping stone. Don't do yourself the disservice of working in other areas or spreading yourself too thin. You really need to dive into the commitment of law school, and you have to trust the process. When they tell you to spend the 3 hours a week outlining and reviewing your notes, spend that time because it will ultimately serve you. It might be a new experience and you've never done this before, but your professors are very good at what they do, and they'll walk you through those processes. And you just need to do it. There's no shortcuts, especially that 1L year. Buying case briefs is not the same as reading a case and creating a case brief yourself. So it's really just putting in the work, putting in the energy, and remembering that underlying why you came to law school and why you want to be an attorney to get you through those late nights.
Couldn't have said it better. That's fabulous advice. So thank you everyone for joining us. I'm going to give Abe back a few minutes to prep for his 6 o'clock class. Thank you, Abe, so much for spending a little bit of your very limited time with us. I do so much appreciate it, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your evening.